Welcome to Drinks in the Library, the only library where drinks aren't just allowed, they are required. I'm your librarian host, Gigi Howard, and each episode I'll be interviewing a guest about a much-loved book that we will be pairing with a drink for you to enjoy along with us or consider for your next book club meetup. As always, stay curious and support your local library. Hello, Libration Nation. I have got an amazing episode this week. We are talking about The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. It follows two sisters in Nazi-occupied France as they navigate love, loss, and resistance and survival during World War II. My guest this week is Kara Infante. Kara is a mom, wife, and host of the Bookish Flights podcast. At Bookish Flights, Kara and her guests tell their stories through the books they love. Each episode features a book flight, 3 thoughtfully paired books connected by a theme, topic, or genre. So think of it like a wine flight, but for books. Kara and I are doing a podcast swap this week. So after you listen to this, head over there to hear me talk about 3 books I love by Xochitl Gonzalez. It was a blast talking to Kara. We have 2 drink options for you this week. One is a Lear's Classico non-alcoholic sparkling wine for when you want to sip without side effects. The other is a Lavender French 75. We picked sparkling wine to go with our book this week because of the champagne and celebrations that occurred after France was liberated. If you're enjoying the show, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Please tell a friend about it this week. Tell 10 friends. All of that helps me grow and keep this going. All right, let's get to it. Hi, Kara. This has been you and I are having so much fun so far. Yeah.
Just spending all morning together.
All morning on Zoom, and we're loving it. Yes. So you and I connected on Threads, and you are doing something similar to me, coast to coast. So let's talk about you and your podcast.
Yeah, so I host the Bookish Flights podcast, and very simply, it's a place where we tell our stories through our favorite books. And I ask guests to bring 3 books in the form of a book flight. And so they're paired together by theme, topic, genre, author. I mean, you name it. I'm pretty flexible. I just think that as readers, we love to know what other readers are reading. And so it's a really fun way to learn that.
Yes. What has been, and I wasn't planning on asking this, but do you have a particular book that surprised you or a flight that, really got you excited one day when you were recording?
Yeah, there's so many good ones. I mean, people have come on with some unique ones. I'm thinking recently Animals and Fantasy or an anthropomorphic book flight. I mean, people have run the gamut we just had episode 200 come this week. And so we have had all sorts of different ones. But I love to see the creativity that people come up with and how they pair these books together. And because I love reading with that little bookish serendipity, I call it, where you're reading one book and then you read the next one, not realizing they're tied together. There's a theme or a topic or an era or a place that ties it to the last book you read. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm still in 1942 France or whatever, to use what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And so I love when there's that common thread that runs through and you feel like it's tied together a bit by the universe.
Yes. Yes. Are you like me? Are you a little woo-woo or?
I mean, I definitely have things, right? I could fall down the rabbit hole about a lot of things. But I definitely think that books come into our lives. In fact, I end the show with that is they come into our lives when we most need them. And I truly believe that.
I do. I agree. Yeah, for sure. All right. So I kind of want to jump right into the book we're discussing today because you brought this to me, The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. And I had just been thinking so much about Kristin Hannah's journey and as a writer and as someone that she's blown up the library.
Yeah.
So who were you when you first read The Nightingale?
Yeah, I think this is such an important question because what The Nightingale did for me as an adult in my reading life, it just exploded my world of books. And so I think that's why I realized I read this in 2016. So it's been 10 years. And I think that's why this book meant so much to me because it just opened my life to reading again as an adult. Mm-hmm. I had kind of gotten away from it when I'm a physical therapist. So I had gone to grad school, college, grad school, done that whole track. And I know myself very well that if I was reading a leisure book at the time I was in school, I would not do the studying I was supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So for 7 years of my life, I didn't really read that much because I was like, you need to focus on your studies. You need to focus on what you're going to school for. And I would only read on breaks, right? Christmas, summer break. And so taking you back to 2016, we had just moved overseas. We were living in Sicily at the time. And I had a 2.5-year-old. I had left my job, so I was now a stay-at-home mom. And it's very lonely. I'm a military spouse, so we move a lot. And when you move to new places, it's very lonely and isolating for a while. You don't know a lot of people. You don't know where you're going. You're using GPS all the time to drive everywhere. And I had lived in Italy before. I had lived in Rome. But it was a very different experience, though, I will say, because we had smartphones when we lived in Sicily. When I lived in Rome, we did not. And that was a whole different story. But I started listening to the Nightingale on an audiobook. And I think it was maybe the first audiobook that grabbed my attention, because I don't know that it was my first audiobook I had ever listened to, but I had done a lot of nonfiction reading on audiobooks thinking, oh, this is a way I can learn about sleep or parenting or all sorts of things, right? Well, I popped in the Nightingale, and let me tell you, that book took me for a ride. It hit me in all the emotional parts. And I always say if a book can make me feel something emotionally, it always gets an extra star in my book because you have made me experience that book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess guiding us into it's set in World War II. Yeah. So tell us, who are our protagonists? Where do we begin?
Yes. So it's set in Vichy-occupied France in, I think it's 1942, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
And it's about two sisters. There's Vianne Mauriac and there's Isabelle Rossignol. And they are, like I said, living in Vichy-occupied France. And what happens is this book is, as the Nazis start to come in, Vianne, the sister, she has a daughter, is forced to billet a Nazi officer in her home. And Isabel has a bit more of a ferocious resistance fighter heart. And this is not happening. And she decides that she's going to join the French resistance. And as you can imagine, these two sisters don't really understand each other very much in this, right? They have two different hearts in this and they don't understand one another. But Isabel goes off and joins the French resistance, and Vianne has to stay home with her daughter and is forced to billet this Nazi officer. And I should say Vianne was married, but her husband also got conscripted to the French army as well. So he's gone at this time. And that's really where you start to dig into everything that they experience throughout this, what Vianne is trying to do to maintain the home front and a normal life for her daughter, but watching the atrocities happening around her. And then Isabel's over here fighting with the French resistance, and Vianne can't quite understand that because she's playing it safe because she has a daughter.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, and thinking, okay, we're both moms. And so do you think you could relate to either of them at different points of your life differently? I just think a little bit about who I was as a 20-year-old and who I am now. And I want to protect my family.
Yeah. There's way more I shouldn't say there's way more at stake, right? When we're 20 versus when you have a family, but your purpose feels different, right? Mm-hmm. Now my mama bear mode can get activated very quickly in me, which I wouldn't have understood as a 25-year-old, right? And I think that I related definitely more to Vianne at the time because I am a mom. And I don't think that makes me more timid, but that's why I love reading, is because it gives you this chance to think, would I have the courage to be an Isabel? Or what would I do if I was Vianne, faced with everything that she was facing, with the community gossiping about her because there's a Nazi officer in her home, which she was forced to have to do, right?
Right.
Or scrounging for food in the food lines every day, or just what they had to endure. And it gives you the opportunity to think, how would I respond in that way?
Yeah. And talking about some of the hardships that they have to go through, what really struck you in the story that made you feel those emotions?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to ask you this ahead of time, I don't necessarily want to give spoilers, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's kind of, which Kristin Hanna does in most all of her books, if you have read her books, but I think it reaches into how much you can suffer in our human condition, in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to get out of here unscathed. But with the Nightingale and most of other Kristin Hannah's books, it's just like the next shoe drops and you're like, oh, but there's more suffering around the next corner.
Yeah.
And how do you dig in? How do you keep going on? How do you put one foot in front of the other when you just can't imagine another terrible thing happening, and it does?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of her books. You're like, oh, they can't get much worse than this. Oh, it will. It will get much worse. And talking about her a little bit, what other books by Kristin Hannah have you read?
So I have read The Women.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, I have this funny story. So I actually interviewed her back on episode 65.
No.
And she had been my favorite author because I read The Nightingale in 2016.
Oh my gosh.
And this had been my top 3 book since 2016. And so I interviewed her for The Women when it came out because I'm a military spouse and I'm living near Coronado, which is where the book is set. So that was how I had kind of pitched to have her come on. And they said yes. And I'm in the airport. We were going to Albuquerque at the time. And I'm like crying in the airport because I'm like, I don't watch TV. So authors for me are my celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like crying in the airport. The people probably thought I was nuts. I was I had just my daughter. I wasn't with the rest of our family. But it was quite the moment. And so funny story about The Women is they were supposed to send me the review copy so I could read it ahead of time for the interval. Well, it never came. And I had this moment, I'm like, well, how do I email them and be like, oh, my free book never came? And so my really good friend here, we've lived in Sicily together. And now we actually live in San Diego together, which doesn't always happen, but the Navy gets smaller over time.
Okay.
And so the week the show came out, she was like, I'm so proud of you. She's messaging me. What did you think of the book? And I was like, well, I actually haven't read it yet. And so she sent it to me as a gift. I'm so proud of you type gift. It's actually on my shelf over there. But I have read it now. But I've read, we just read The Winter Garden for my local book club that I have here.
Mm-hmm.
The Great Alone.
Yeah.
And I think those are like the major ones.
Yeah. That you've read. Yeah. That is so interesting. And I think that's something interesting that you and I could probably share, war stories about is interview and getting arcs and tearing through arcs or not getting the arc and then pretending that you read the book.
And the good thing is we're not trying to give spoilers. So if I'm just sticking to more of these surfacey level questions when I'm interviewing the author, it's not that much big of a deal because I'm like, we don't want to spoil it anyways. We want to just entice people to want to pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. It's a very interesting experience. And they're just humans, they're just humans on the other side too. But yeah.
That's my motto. Don't fangirl. She's just a human too. Don't fangirl. Like all day long until the interview was coming. That was all that I was telling myself,
Yeah. Okay, now I need to go back and listen to this. So that is amazing. Kudos to you. I did fangirl him. I met Michael Threats back in October, the librarian superstar. And I felt so bad because I was like, I probably terrified him a little bit, but he was so lovely and everything. Yeah. But yeah, it's tough when you meet really legit famous people.
Yeah.
How do I act? Do I just be cool and act like I don't know who you are?
Which I'm not that cool in real life, so it's really hard for me to do overall.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't wait to listen to that. I also love The Women. So I want to talk more about this story as well, but just Kristin Hannah is a once-in-a-lifetime author in just her journey. I was listening to her talk on another podcast, and maybe she came up when you interviewed her as well, about how she joked that she was an overnight sensation because I maybe The Nightingale, but then definitely The Women, like everybody read that book last year, or I guess 2 years ago now. But she's not an overnight sensation. She's been writing for 20, 30 years, and she's been putting out incredible books, honestly. I've loved everything I've read by her.
Yeah. She did talk about in the episode, which I found I absolutely loved. And I was still on the journey, which we haven't talked about, why I started necessarily Bookish Lights, but I wanted to try fantasy books, just to give you a little bit of a backstory. And she talks about on there how the world building in fantasy is very similar to historical fiction, because she has to put us into 1942 France, and we have to believe that we are in that. And that for me, at that time, it opened up this whole new world of reading, because I'm like, well, maybe I do love fantasy books. I just haven't really tried them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talking a little bit for my listeners about you starting Bookish Flights. Do you want to give them a little insight into where you were and who were you when you started Bookish Flights?
Yeah, that's a great question. So had a 3-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and we had just moved from Sicily back to the States. And it was August of 2020, and my husband left on a 7-month deployment. So as we know, life had kind of stopped and there wasn't a ton of travel, and we did not move to where our families were. So I was all by my lonesome out in San Diego, California. Thankfully, I could be outside. Thank goodness for that.
And you were in San Diego, which is
yes,
so lovely.
And so I was in this long 7-month deployment. And for anybody that has been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, the days just go on. And you have young children. So you're not getting to go out and do all the things, right? You're just solely caretaking and trying to get to the next day and survive. And I need something to dream about. I think that was my brain's signal of, you need a moment of sanity. And so I started dreaming. I had been a podcast listener for many years at that point. What if I start a podcast? What if I, start talking to people? And I had mentioned I'm a physical therapist. So I thought for a minute of like, well, maybe I do one on physical therapy. And I'm like, no, I'll get bored with that pretty quick. And so I thought about, what else do people call me for? And I was like, they call me for books because I've been a lifelong reader. I read it voraciously. It is my hobby that has followed me through my life. And so I was like, well, I could still talk about physical therapy topics and I could talk about books, but then the world of books, you could go so many more different ways. And so, so that's where Bookish Flights came from, was this. And as readers, we can give way too many book recommendations. So I wanted to keep us in check. And so I decided, let's do a book flight where we bring the 3 books. And that way it kind of keeps our recommendations to a minimum because we could go on and on and on with book recommendations.
Oh, this is leading me to a question that you're not prepared to answer. Okay, what is your personality type? Do you have like your Myers-Briggs type or your Enneagram or anything like that?
I don't, but I've thought about this a lot because I think my job as a physical therapist lended itself really well. And we talk about this a lot on my show is, what we think we're going to be at 18 and 25 and 40, it changes over time. And I thought like at 18, I would just be a physical therapist forever. And that would be my job and that I would never be anything different. And then at 25, you realize, I graduate or let's say 31. 31, I realized I'm doing something very different than I thought I was going to be doing. But the skills still translate. And so I say this because when I would interview patients, I have you in the clinic. I have 45 minutes to get to know you, to know your history, to know what happened, to know what you're trying to do, to know what's bothering you, to know your motivations, to then give you something to help you in 45 minutes. And I think that lends itself very well to podcasting as we have a very short time to kind of get to know each other really quick. So I answer that in saying there's a bit of that. But also my dad we couldn't go anywhere that he didn't know someone when I was growing up. And I'd be like, oh, Dad, because he was a talker too, right? I'd be like, oh, Dad, come on. Like we just went for breakfast and now we've been here for 45 minutes talking to so-and-so. But what I realized in that is my dad taught me to be a good listener. And I think that's why my dad knew everybody, because he was a good listener. He loved listening to people's stories. And I think there's that in me too. And that's why I love podcasting and interviewing people, because I'm getting to know you. Yeah. I'm getting to know your story.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that 100%. I think being a good interviewer is like 80% being a good listener.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like your dad. I can't walk down my street without having a 45-minute conversation.
And your daughters are like, Mom, come on.
Yeah. You're like, I need to go. So going back, I love what you said about who we are is different at different points of our lives. And I guess that does take us back to these sisters a little bit and the dynamics between them. You've got one that's out fighting in the resistance and then one that feels probably very trapped in a way. What do you think?
Yeah. And I think Vianne, the sister that quote unquote was trapped, she had never really stepped into her power. Definitely in the beginning of the book, right? And never had to be like the other sister. The other sister was sent away to boarding schools. I think that doesn't give you too much of a backstory. Their mom died when they were young, and the dad didn't quite know how to handle them. So the youngest sister got sent to boarding school, and this other sister got married and had a daughter. And that sister, Isabel, had escaped boarding school multiple times and ran away back to home. And so she had always had that fighting spirit. And I think Vianne didn't think she had that in her. But as you'll read through the book, and without too many spoilers, she kind of learns how to access that. She's seeing these atrocities around her and recognizing this is wrong. We are treating people terribly. This is not right. And so she finds her own way to be the resistance. But it just takes her more time because she's not used to being like that.
Yeah. What do you think this story is telling us about being brave and standing up for moment? I mean, I think about this a lot, about who I am when nobody's looking is the real me, even when it's scary. And what do you think that the Nightingale informs about that side of us all?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just to the very obvious fact that we were just saying is that I think we all can be brave, no matter who we are as a person or what we think we are as a person. I think it is all in us. I think it maybe takes being pushed into a corner to recognize that bravery, right? I mean, or we can access that pretty quickly as a mom, right? We see something with our kids and you're like, oh, okay, wait. This is not happening. Yeah. I'm going to stand up here. Because I've always thought of myself as a very non-confrontational person. Anybody that knows me would probably tell you that, because I've probably told them that there's been moments I found with my kids that, nope, I need to stand up in this moment for my child. And it might be very uncomfortable, but for me, that feels like the right thing. So I think when you know what you're fighting for and what you're fighting against, I think that makes your picture a bit clearer.
Yeah. And I think another thing of being a mom is that your kids see you. They see how you act and the things that you do. This is such a silly story. I've never told this story. It happened recently. She and my daughter, who's 11, we were at the mall shopping for gifts for someone, and she kept pulling candy out of her pocket. And I was like, this is so weird. Where are you getting this candy from? And I asked her, and she said something that made me think that she already had it. And we get to the car, and so we had left the mall. We're like driving out, and I was like, oh, that candy, you already had it. She was like, oh no, Mom, they had the candy at all of the cashier's desk.
Yeah.
They were giving it away for free. And I was like, sweetie, that was not free. You were supposed to buy that. So then I was like, so we turned all the way around, go back in the store, and I explained to the lady, who probably was like, man, this is like $1.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I need to see my child see me pay for this. So
the lesson behind that.
The lesson, yeah. And so I think so much of that. Did anything change for you when you became a mom?
I can't pinpoint like right away when I became a mom, but I have been thinking about this recently, that we should be able to put mom on our resumes, because I work harder than I ever did in a physical therapy clinic than I do at being a mom. And just, I mean, the multitasking, the phone calls you have to make, the constant lists in your head, like managing, I have 3 kids, so managing all of them and their schedules and all the things, that is more executive level functioning than I ever did as a physical therapist. I'm like, I should be able to put this on my resume.
Yeah.
And I think that is another thing about me, is I'm going to say I'm a procrastinator, but I always just do better under pressure. Even when I was in school, when the deadline was like 2 days out, I could get my, fire going. And realizing that with kids, like my me time is very short, if at all, some days. And so when I get it, I'm like, nope, we are on it. Like, and you're just very good at creating cracks of time because you don't have much of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, it's very high executive functioning, all the things you have to get done, and not letting any of the balls drop. They're all in the air all the time. Yeah. Who are some of your favorite characters in The Nightingale, or a favorite moment that you had in the story?
I was thinking about this as well, of like, why did I love this book so much? And I'm also an only child. And so I think what this book really lets you explore is that sisterhood relationship. And not having grown up with that, to me, I just found that fascinating. And I've always loved family dynamics. And so I don't know that I definitely resonated with Vianne, just because of where I was in my life. But seeing how they all loved one another throughout their trials, even with their misunderstandings and not understanding one another, because even the father is a bit misunderstood in this story. That to me, I don't know that it's his favorite character, but just those family dynamics I loved. And through suffering and adversity, right? How that prevails.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some other books with, because I also love family drama.
Yeah.
Do you have any other favorites that you really love that kind of like maybe kind of same vibes as the Nightingale? If you like that part of the Nightingale, you might like this.
Oh, okay. So I was going to take you contemporary because I thought of Tracy Lang. I feel like she does family dynamics so well. And What Happened to the McCrays was her most recent one. But We Are the Brennans she's done. And there's, I think it's The County of Connolly Dawn. But they're all about family dynamics, but definitely in contemporary settings. So one's like set in, I believe it's Pennsylvania. One's in Ireland.
Yeah.
But you get those kind of family dynamics in an Irish background setting, which is different than my own. So it's unique to see that. But let's see. So I'm going to say family dynamics, but found family is the other, like that's catnip to me of books, right? I will pick up any found family book if you have me there. And I'm thinking of The Borrowed Life of Frederick Feight, which again is not historical fiction, but it's by Anna Johnston. Have you read that one?
I haven't read that one.
So he's an older gentleman, and I don't think this gives too much, but he had a bad fall, and so he has this moment, like it kind of cracks his reality. He doesn't know what happened before to what happened after, but he ends up in this nursing home van because he was an older protagonist, and he ends up in this nursing home van and ends up like basically stealing someone else's identity without kind of realizing he did it. And so he ends up as this befuddled old man that was in a nursing home when he really was like with it before. And so he has to take on this new identity, but he creates like he's him going through this nursing home and interactions, and it just the people that encircle him in that book of the family and characters in the nursing home. He has an estranged daughter, but he's pretending to be someone else. I mean, there's just so many found family elements. So it's not quite sisterhood.
Do you know what I'm thinking of right now?
Yeah.
You just interviewed her. It was The Road to Tender Hearts.
Yes, Annie Hartnett.
Annie Hartnett. Yeah, I was because I loved, that was one of my favorite books I read last year. And I was like, oh my gosh, you just interviewed her. That's amazing. But yeah, that is also the story you're describing is reminding me of The Road to Tender Hearts with Uncle PJ and the two kids. And they're all just,
I mean, they are. Cat.
Yeah.
That predicts death. And like, I love those quirky cast of characters, but that's not the Nightingale. They're definitely not quirky characters. But the other one, I guess the other sister one that's coming to mind is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett.
Yes, love that one.
Not quite the same vibe at all, but it definitely features two sisters.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the found family dynamic, all that good stuff. And I will say for Rita, like for Kristin Hannah, like anything after The Nightingale, I think if you read The Nightingale and you love it, you will love anything that she's written since.
Yes. Yeah. Because she really explores friendships or sisterhood or mother-daughter relationships. She's definitely exploring those dynamics in all of her books.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you read Firefly Lane by her?
I'm trying to think.
Those are the two friends. It was a TV show.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there's two. There's Fly Away. I read both of them. But
okay.
That one, it came out before The Nightingale, but I always think that was like, she's getting on the runway and the plane's getting ready to take off. That was like right at the beginning. That one blew up as well. Yeah. But it's not sisterhood, but it's those two women are like sisters in a way. So
yeah.
Did you, and because I want to talk about Kristin Hannah a little bit, did you get anything, now that I know you've interviewed her, spill the tea in the best way?
Yeah. I asked her about writing that emotional piece of her books, right? Because I have cried in every Kristin Hannah book I have ever read. And I say that with the sense, don't feel like, okay, I can't read it. Go and read it because it is such a ride, but it makes you feel something.
Yeah.
You might need a rom-com after to kind of break it up. You wouldn't want to go to another heavy book, but it's not so heavy that you wouldn't want to pick it up. But she joked, I always get that. I think people think I'm like typing at my computer and sobbing away over my book. But it's really not about that. I do cry over my books, but I love making people feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I think she is just she's someone that I can look up to. At least I don't want to enforce that on other people. But I'm just so impressed by her and some of the things that she said. I was listening to her talk and she said, define success for yourself. Don't let others define it for you.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, in my own life. And you and I were just, before we started recording, we were saying we're about the same age. And it's, where do I go from here? And what do I want out of life?
Yeah.
And figuring that out for myself. Have you asked yourself that same question?
Absolutely. I think I constantly have to ask myself that question because there's so many things vying for our time, and it is so easy to just go off to the next thing and just kind of go through the motions. But my favorite question to ask myself actually is, where do I want to be when I'm 80?
Mm-hmm.
Hoping I make it to 80, but that helps me put into perspective where I should be spending my time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that Mumford and Sons song, Awake My Soul. And the one line is like, where you invest your love is where you invest your life. And it's so beautiful. I think about it all the time. And because it's true, where you spend your time is what's gonna manifest for you later. And I kind of said that in a really redundant way. But you have to constantly ask yourself where you're at.
Yeah. No, you said that in a very beautiful way. I don't know. I don't know. I cry so easily. So the tears they build up very easily. So
my kids will watch movies together and they'll be like, is mom crying? I'm like, yes.
I know. Moana. What is
all kids movies get me.
All kids movies. Annabelle and I, that's my daughter's name. We saw Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume.
Yes.
And within the first 4 minutes, she looks over at me and she's, oh my God, she's crying.
One day they'll understand.
Yeah.
So, but I think you have to recalibrate often. I find we're like approaching my boys play baseball and all my kids play soccer. And so the freight train's coming next weekend. That games start on Saturdays and I'm just holding on for dear life, but we've been trying to make the most of family time because I know what's coming. But I think knowing what I want when I'm 80, I'm constantly asking myself. And like you said, I think we compare ourselves to others a lot. I think is easy to do, but I often have to remind myself I haven't gone back to the physical therapy clinic. I guess I should say that. We moved overseas and then when we came back, COVID hit, so things weren't open. And so I decided that being with my kids was my choice. That's what I wanted to do. And when I think about like all the things I could be doing for the podcast, or I'd love to write a book one day, or all these other things, I'm like, but wait a minute, you left the clinic so you had time to be with your kids.
Right.
So I could go do all those things, but at the cost of what?
Yeah.
And that's just my personal journey, right? But I do have to constantly ask myself, is this make sense?
Yeah. And we all make those choices, whether you realize it or not. And I think that's the important thing is being conscious of it. If you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, right?
Yeah.
And what do you want to say yes to? And so it's hard, like when you're juggling. I had someone recently tell me, they're like, you guys seem so pulled together. And I was like, that is amazing. Because I constantly flying by the seat of my pants.
Same. If you lived in my head, you would not think the same thing at all.
Yeah. So anyway, I so love that. And just talking about Kristin Hannah a little bit more, because the same thing we're talking about, I loved that she described her writing journey over time and that she actually had wanted to write The Women when she was like 37. And I think she pitched it and they said, well, I guess you know how books are. If you are thinking about writing a book, just know that whatever story you have, even if it's amazing, if the world is not ready for it, if the publishing world doesn't want to write it, it's not coming out. So anyway, so they kind of told her that nobody wants this Vietnam book. And they said, you're too young. You're too young to really understand that story. So she said, she kept writing, she kept plugging along. And then I think she wrote The Nightingale when she was about 50 is what she said.
Okay.
And then she said she only wanted to tell stories about women who maybe were overlooked or hadn't had their story told. And of course we see that. But I love that she not only, I guess, embraced who she was as she aged, but also sees the intense value from that. And like how wise is that? thought. I thought it was amazing.
I think that that's one thing, I had someone say to me the other day, "Oh, your birthday's coming up." And I thought, yeah, and I'm not excited at all because it's just another year older. But I think there's something to be said when you look at the decades of your life. Your 20s, there's a lot of uncertainty. You're not quite sure who you are. Your 30s, you get into that a little, you really kind of get a clearer picture of who you are, where you want your life to be. And I think now, like in my 40s, and I care less and less about what people think about that. When you can be clear, and Kristin Hannah, I know this story still needs to be told, and I'm clear on that. I'm just going to keep writing until the right time is ready for the women. When you have that clear picture and you have that drive, nothing's going to stop you. Time might, but you'll get there eventually.
Yeah. I like you said, it's been, I think a lot of times people are in their 20s and they think this is it. It doesn't get better than that. And it's really nice when, your knees don't hurt sometimes.
Or you have time, freedom of time.
Right, exactly. All of those things are great, but there's so much that you learn through life and through aging. And I in my book club, a lot of them are older than me. So I said something like, well, I'll be 45 in a few years. And they all just sort of like, ugh. Come talk to me when you're 50. Okay. Yeah. Is there, I guess we already kind of talked about, do you read this genre often? Like books kind of like The Nightingale, but we already talked about fan family, but is there anything else in genre that you would love to address?
So I would say historical fiction is my go-to genre because I love that you can learn at the same time you get taken on a ride with a really good story. And I don't know about you, but I don't remember anything from my history classes back in school. But when I read a story in context like that, it helps me make sense of the world a little bit more. And also sometimes very scarily recognize that the same things that were happening back then are happening today. And thinking we could all learn from one another if we just, understood history a little bit more. And so historical fiction would be my go-to. And I didn't want to necessarily give you another in genre, but another author that I love, if you really enjoy Kristin Hannah's Kate Quinn.
Yes.
I think she writes a lot about strong women, or Marie Benedict even. They both write about strong, untold stories of women in history. So if you like a vein like that, they would be good recommendations too.
Yeah. Have you read The Rose Code?
Yes.
Oh, so good. I read that for this show with my cousin came on.
Fun.
Yeah. I love those books.
So we read The Diamond Eye for our local book club. And it was, I always ask at the end of the year, because we kind of read with the school year, right? Because summer hits and schedules explode. And so that was everybody's favorite book that we read, The Diamond Eye. It's about a Russian woman sniper. And I feel like when you get into World War II books, you don't often get the Russian side of it. So it's really interesting. It's another side of the story, but also based on a true story of this woman sniper.
Okay.
It's a really good one.
Girl power. So is there anything in The Nightingale that we haven't touched on yet that you wanted to make sure we got to?
So interestingly, I didn't know if The Nightingale was based on a true story, but when I was researching after I finished the book 2 nights ago, and I'm just here to tell you I still cried, even though I had already read it and I knew where the story was going, but it still hit me emotionally and still holds in my top books, which I was wondering, because I've read so much more in those 10 years, that would this still hold as one of my favorites? It's definitely still up there. But I got to researching it then to come on your show, and it is based off a Belgian woman who helped save downed airmen in World War II, which I didn't know.
Well, very cool. And classic Kristin Hannah. She said she researches books now for a whole year. So she takes 1 year to research and 2 years to write each book. Yeah. So that doesn't surprise me that it's a true story. Who would you recommend The Nightingale to?
I would... Well, if you're like me and you just want to get back into reading again as an adult, I feel like it's a great entry to books. It's such an accessible story. It's going to take you for a ride. If you're, I'm trying to think if men would enjoy it. Do you know any men that have read it?
My husband read it.
Okay, what did he think?
He liked it. I think because it was a huge popular book, and I really loved it. So he started reading it. And he got halfway through it, he goes, wait a second, is this a love story?
We forgot to add that in. There is
There's a love story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think he liked it. I don't know if he's picking up any Kristin Hannah after that, but
yeah. I mean, I think it's a great book club pick too, because I
Uh-huh.
think it's really ripe for discussion in
Yeah.
that sense of, would I behave the same way, or who
Right.
do I identify with in the story? I think so. Let's keep it with women. I think women of all ages, though, and anybody that's curious about history. Or I didn't know much about Vichy occupied France when I read
Right.
it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like that, they had Nazis were in France at the time. I mean, I knew that, but not really, right? What does that mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's, like you said earlier, it's so often we learn something in our history class, but you don't really think about what that experience could have, what
Yes.
it was like for the people that had to live it. It's just sort of a paragraph. When it was, if you read a novel like this, it will really take you into thinking about what that was like and who would have you been in that same scenario. So for sure.
Absolutely.
Kara, let's put a spotlight on you, or allow you to put a spotlight on anything you would like to discuss or talk about your show. Let everybody know where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question. So everything can be found at bookishflights.com, or I hang out mostly on Instagram or Threads, and it's just at bookishflights on both those platforms. We were talking on my show because we've been spending all morning together. But I think when you find our shows and you're going to be at 100 and I just had 200, it's, where do I start?
Right.
I have a roadmap that I made at the 175 episode mark. I need to update it a little bit, but it's broken down by genre. So if you're like, I don't know where to start, and I've done all genres, I've even had kids on the show. My kids have been on the show recommending books. So we have all sorts of recommendations there, but it's broken down by historical fiction or mysteries or children's books. There's all sorts. If you can grab that on my website, and that might be a good place to get you started, because you could start with some beloved genres.
Yes. Well, I love it. And you're inspiring me. I'm like, I need to get a little bit more organized, but we'll see when I get to it.
Well, it took me to episode 175 to do it. So you got done.
I've got 75 more. Yes, this has been amazing. Okay. And I just realized we haven't talked about the drink at all. And you were so thoughtful in what you brought today. So what are we drinking?
So we are drinking, this is Liars. Let's see, Classico. I brought the can so I could read it. Classico Sparkling. But I gave up drinking about a year and a half ago after a really bad hangover on New Year's Eve. It's like, I never want to feel like that again. And so it's been about a little over a year that I haven't had a drink now. And when I feel like I can still partake and feel like I'm part of the group that's having a drink, it's really fun for me. But I have found that non-alcoholic wines tend to be very sweet, which I never liked in wines when I drank them. And I found this sparkling, and it's so good. It's like a little champagne, and I chose it because at the end of World War II, obviously they were in France, and there's the Champagne region of France, and they were making champagne back then. And that was what they had on Victory Day, was a ton of champagne flowing through the city. So I thought that this little NA champagne would be a great addition to our show together. Yeah, so I love it. So that's the one that we'll put in the show notes. I couldn't find it here in Virginia, so I have to tell you, it was so funny. My husband went to the store, and I was like, if you can find an NA sparkling French, if they have it. Which, as we know, in NA cocktails, it's limited, right?
And he was like, I'll do my best. So anyway, but this has been so lovely. I am thrilled that we've become friends. This has been, like you said, we've spent all morning together. So it's been a blast talking about books and our lives, right?
Yes, I know. We have to keep in touch. I feel like we found a friend in one another. And I actually, when someone posted on Threads pull us back to the beginning.
Yeah.
You and Drinks in the Library need to do an interview together.
Yes. And you know who I think that was? I think that was Catherine Herndon, who is the executive director of James River Writers. I'm pretty sure that was her. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. We did it. This is for you, Catherine. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for spending some time with me and my guests for an episode of Drinks in the Library. For more information about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Drinks in the Library, on the World Wide Web, drinksinthelibrary.com, or shoot me an email at drinkspod@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.